Hi, this is the Social Gelo with Angelo show. My name's Angelo. I'm a social scientist, surfer, martial artist, and a whole lot of other things. Coming to you live from Kasai City, Japan, the Social Gelo with Angelo show.
What's up? And welcome to Social Gelo with Angelo. This is not the Kajukembo podcast. I need to say that because at this point, a lot of people start thinking, oh, this is like a Kajukembo podcast. It's become a lot about Kajukembo because I teach Kajukembo and I love Kajukembo. But this is part of a series. It started off as a Q&A. If you are watching this as your first episode, just know that you can go to my YouTube playlist and find the Kajukembo Methods playlist series with different methods of Kajukembo, which I was telling my guests today off camera that it started because one of my subscribers asked me the question, what's the difference between the Gaylord method, the Emperado method, and the Tenpai method? What's the best one for self-defense? I wouldn't answer that. And I stay away from those kind of questions. But I did decide to help this person learn more about Kajukembo because I feel like there's just not enough content about Kajukembo. Oh, that's a strong statement. There's not a lot of content on the internet, on YouTube, talking about Kajukembo and Kajukembo history. Now, for those listening, there is the KSDI Talk Story podcast, which I'm so happy is being run by people that know way more about it than I do. I'm just a guy who does Kajukembo in Japan and likes talking to my ohana on the internet. Luckily, it's not as weird because of Zoom. All right, so that being said, my guests today, drum roll, and I'm famous for butchering my guests' names before we get started, but I think I may, for the first time ever in 8 years, get this right. David Amiccuci and Leah Ramos.
Yes, sir.
Got it.
Yes, sir.
This is going to make everyone else so upset. Every single other person that I've totally messed up their name, they're going to be so upset right now. How dare? Why do you get their name? Why do you get their names right? So we're talking about the Ramos method today. David, Leah, can you tell me a little about your background and yourselves and your connection to the Ramos method?
Yes, let's start. Well, my connection is that I'm Tony Ramos's daughter, Antonio's daughter, first daughter. And so out of all the children, when he retired from here, he didn't want to leave Fairfield empty. He wanted his legend to remain. And this gentleman right here stood up and said, I'll take care of it. And so basically, he grabbed it and ran with it. And 33, 4, 5 years later, here we are. You know, I was his partner all the way through. He's, you know, he does everything my father blessed him with. And he promised my father that he was going to see this through. He was never going to let it go, ever. And that's what happened with and then, you know, of course, we have a big family now, huge family, and he loves it. Do you love it?
Absolutely. So Angelo, I'll tell you a little bit about my background. So I have over 40 years of martial arts and grappling experience, collegiate grappling. 30 years law enforcement and corrections experience, as far as training, tactical and military. My primary art is Tony Ramos Kajukembo. My secondary art is Kokoi Cañete Doce Pares, from directly Kokoi Cañete. I was chosen as a successor to my father-in-law when before he passed away, of the Ramos lineage. And we call Antonio A. Ramos. He has a given title that we use in our school, is Agong. We call him Agong. And Agong is a loose translation of a word, because, you know, Chinese words have several meanings to it. The translation of Agong is the man who walks the righteous path. But also it is basically like how, you know, Sijo means founder. And that's the teaching sense. Agong is like the senior member or the founder of the family in the non-teaching sense. So that's why we call him that respectful title, because he's the founder of the Ramos system or method of Kajukembo.
There you go.
And then
You'll break it down.
I know we said we're gonna, and then for those of you listening, I'm gonna do another podcast later talking about David's background and all the stuff he did personally in his martial arts journey. But I want to ask one thing. David, did you do another podcast with someone a while back?
So, a few of them, sir.
Okay, all right, yeah. So now if you are the same David, which I'm pretty sure you are, I'm pretty sure it is the same David. I've actually heard one other podcast with you, and I forgot which one it was a while ago. One of my students contacted me and said, because they were wondering, is there anything about, I know you have your Kajukembo podcast, so I looked up Kajukembo online and I found this guy named David. And then so I have it's you. Because he said the wrestling kind of, it rung a bell.
Was it a good one?
I liked it. Yeah, it was good.
Oh, good.
It was good. Yeah, it was good. It was good. I just wasn't gonna make the assumption that it was the same. David. Mike, I have a cousin named David.
Hey.
I think if you're Latino, you have. I think it's a rule somewhere. You got to have a cousin named David. But back to our main story. So here's some things I know and a lot of things I don't know. From what I've heard, if you look at the Kajukembo tree, and for anybody now following this podcast, I don't know how many minutes we are in, and you have no idea what Kajukembo is, I should have said this first. Google Kajukembo. Wikipedia has a pretty good summarization. There's a podcast coming at the end of this called What is Kajukembo that kind of goes over that. But from what I've heard in the history, and I'm bad at this, Antonio Ramos is one of the people like in the very top. Like if I follow that tree, it goes to the top. Like there's like a picture of the founder, Cijo, and then there's like a box of like these OGs, as I like to call them. They're all there, and then a bunch of stuff starts branching off there, and he's in that main box. And correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of these people came from Hawaii and brought the art over to the mainland, right?
Absolutely.
And Antonio was one of those guys. He came from Hawaii and brought that over the mainland.
Absolutely. So he started training, in the 50s, got his black belt, left Hawaii because he wanted a better life for his wife and 5 children at the time. So he went to LA area because he was a civil service servant, and he tried to get a job in LA, and he worked like part-time there. We had relatives there, and he actually opened up his first school there. And then in 1960, Cijo and Prado had advanced instructors training, and they went ahead and he tested for his black belt in 1960. Then after he received his black belt, he came back because he was living in California. He got a job at Travis Air Force Base in 1962. And he flew it, the whole family came out, and he started working as a jet engine mechanic at Travis Air Force Base. He worked on number 4 engine on the big C5s.
I think he's trying to find out who brought this art here.
So he's the
Yeah, a lot of people did. Like a lot of,
so
but
what
Ramos was like up there, right? Like as far as bringing the art.
Yes. So there was originally a handful of that were like the first group, right? So it was John Leone was the first. Okay. Then they all came within like months and a year of each other. Like, so it was like Reyes, Ramos, Habuna, Gaylord, and then later on the Coscos. So those guys were like the top 5, right? And then that branch just went. So basically, Agong is first generation Kajukembo, and I'm second. We're second generation Kajukembo.
And then, Leah, how old were you when you came over to the States? Like, so you were in Hawaii, right?
Yeah, I was in Hawaii. I was born there. I was almost 2 years old when I got here. Yeah. We were in LA and then we went to San Francisco. But we always had a dojo, even if it was in a garage.
That's how Kajukembo works, right? Or the
Yeah.
park. The park works
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Then the
Been there, done it. My dad never not teach. He had to always teach. That was how he was. And he
So-
always taught.
My one more. So when he came over from Hawaii,
yes.
if I heard this correctly, he had his black belt. He didn't.
No,
have his
so
black belt.
first came from Hawaii. So what was happening there? So there was like 3 original schools. Palama was the base, right? But then there was a school in Kaimaki and a school in oh goodness, Wahiwa. So what happened? Those were the 3 schools, but like Palama was the headquarters. Yeah. So what happened is those were the 3 original schools. Well, that Kajukembo was brand new, right? And those were those original practitioners that came before my father-in-law, right? Which is Sijo and Chu and all those others, right? So after that was developed and they started immediately, it grew like wildfire. They didn't have instructors, so they weren't black belts. But the times they put in training was insane. They trained for hours a day. They didn't train twice a week. They were training like 4 or 5. So they spread out. So they were going to different areas. So Agong, he was an assistant instructor and would teach. And that's why he started teaching at a lower rank. Like, I'm sure, like at your school that you have some of the teaching some basic fundamentals. You have a green belt or a blue belt. So he was an underbelter when he came to California. In fact, they all were. And then what happened is they went back to Hawaii for instructors advanced training and then testing. Then they came back as black belts.
Okay. And so they brought the school over, he started teaching Kajukembo as he came over. And from there, where you mentioned the base, where are we now, like geographically? He got his black belt.
He was in Fairfield, so he moved from LA. He came to Fairfield, California, which is the hometown of where Travis Air Force Base is. We're in Northern California. We're halfway between Sacramento and San Francisco. We're like 40 minutes one way, 45 minutes the other way type thing.
And then how old were you at that point, Leah, when your dad got his black belt?
60. How old were you in 19?
Like almost 1 or 2.
Okay. All right. So you're
Yeah, I'm
still.
How old I am. That's
She's trying to hide. She's trying to hide her age.
You don't have to tell. You don't have to tell me. Yeah. Why did you say 1960? You could have just said.
Probably.
May or may have not been 1960.
Somewhere around that.
Around. Okay, that's fine. I'm just trying to get a rough view of. Okay, why am I asking this question? Like, why does he keep asking me these questions? I'm mostly just trying to figure out when you started trading. I'm trying to lead into that. How old were you when you started trading? I'll just come out and say it now. I was gonna wait for later, but how old were you when you started trading with your dad?
Well, he put us on the mat at like 4 and 5 years old. I mean, whether we liked it or not.
That's how it works.
Because it helped him learn how to teach too. So it was rough.
So, Angelo, I gotta jump in on this real quick because, I love relating to it because, a lot of people like to say I'm old school, right? And in our lineage, that's it. Oh, I'm old school. I'm old school Ramos. I'm old school Ramos. And to me, the only people that are old school Ramos are the ones that were in the garage. They're the ones that just had him raw, straight from the settlement. You know what I'm saying? So those guys
froze our butts in the winter.
Right. You know what I mean?
Heater.
Just, but there was a handful, those are the OGs, those are the, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't fun.
I'm sure my daughter says something very similar.
Right? Yes.
My daughter's like 7 or 8. She already got kicked out. I kicked her out.
Oh, wow.
She
Oh,
got kicked out for having an attitude for a year. She got suspended.
no way.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So either way, she's back. But anyway, we'll get back to the Ramos lineage. So,
Right.
um,
Right. That's right.
but I'm just trying to realize that Kajukembo, we don't mess around. That's
You're right.
That's what when you're saying, oh, it was hard, it was cold, it was winter. I'm just thinking about my gym out here. I had no AC, no heater. I finally got one.
Oh, what a good.
I finally got one, but I didn't have one. I just tell him, put an extra layer on, throw your coat. I'm hot. Take off your shirt.
Hey, well, I tell him, I go, this is for this air conditioning and stuff. You want air conditioning stuff? That's for the spectators. It's not for you guys. It's not good for you to have air conditioning on while you're training. Come on, you know.
Good training. It's good at air conditioning.
It adds character.
So, so one of the things I've been asking a lot of the people talking about their methods. So what's something that you feel is unique to the Ramos method? As you know, and we don't have to go too far into how outside of your branch about how Kajukembo differs amongst methods, but what's something that you feel is unique to the way your approach is, either philosophy? We'll start with philosophy, and then I'll do a follow-up on self-defense approaches and actual like application. But what would you say is something that you feel is kind of unique, something that comes up a lot when people talk about the Ramos method?
Well, so let me just cover real quick. So off that original knowledge, Grandmaster Mitch, he came up and he spoke on it. And so originally there was 7 forms, 7 pinyon dances, right? And we call them pinyon still, but palama sets, 7 forms. There was 11 punch counters, 11 grab techniques. And the original group guys took basically almost 10 years to get their black belt, right? Between 6 and 10 years. So can you imagine, your students might come to you like they're bored. So can you imagine 7 forms and 22 techniques, right? So what happened was he came and he developed his art. Well, what happened is you got to look at so his knowledge quadrupled. And one of the things that he was known for, I got to share this quick story with you. This Reyes, because, they're like within 10 minutes of us, 15 minutes, Grandmaster Reyes's group. And one of the black belts came in. I was teaching class, and I'm like, boom, when we paid our respects and everything. And he goes, you know what? I just got to tell you, and he points to Gong's picture, and he's like, you know what? Grandmaster Ramos, I got to say, he was always funky, he was real funky. And I'm like, what'd you say? I was like, he was funky. And this dude was like so 70s five. He's an old guy, an old timer, but he goes, no. He saw the look in my face. And he goes, no, I mean, he's funky, he was loose. He wasn't all uptight, like some of the old timers. If it didn't work, he didn't use it. And he modified it. That was huge. But do you know where this stuff came from? Do you know where? I mean, he got it from his instructor, who was, his primary instructor. Cjo definitely taught him, right? But his primary instructor while he was alive was Joe. Okay, was Joseph Imprado, great Grandmaster Joe. And we're so proud and so honored that they posthumously awarded him that, because of his influence. And you got to think about those other old timers that were there, like Woodrow McCandles and all those old timers. So he had a flavor from those, but he didn't just train at Palama. He was at Wahiwa, he moved and he had that. Oh, and of course, Uncle Polly, that's our uncle. That's Leah's uncle, George Saronio, one of the first, guys, one of the first teachers. He was his like assistant. So his influence. So they were like so much alike, these old timers, but they were different. So in that, when he came, so many things he brought that changed. And his influence when he came here, he was influenced by other people. So like you got to look at the evolution of Kajukembo, and like when Sijo around 1965-66 wanted to embrace the Gong Fu throughout the Coast and the influence of the Chuan Fa. So what happened was he went ahead and did that, and Tony Ramos, he was all the old timers, that group that we talked about, they were all asked to absorb that and to take that knowledge on. So most of them said they would do it. Reyes chose to do the original method. He said, no, I want to just keep it like that. And he got permission to do that. So what happened was Agong went to Aldecoscos, and he went to Aldecoscos's, one of his top students at the time, which is Sifu Bill Owens. And he started embracing and learning the Chuan Fa. And he got the requirements for it and everything. And when he couldn't make it, he would bring his sons to go and learn and embrace it. And then they would continually go back and forth. So he shared that with me, but Sifu Bill Owens, he shared at a luncheon dinner with a lunch with us, that my wife, him, Aldecoscos, they were there. And he said, David, I got to tell you something about a gong. I just got to share this with you because it's not a known fact. He goes, but I get upset with Kajukembo and stuff because all these guys said that they would adopt the Chuan Fa and everything, and everybody started wearing the patch. And Tony was the only one. He was like one of the only ones that actually learned the knowledge and brought it back and continued to do it. So that's where we're a huge difference. Kajukembo is hard and soft, but if you do Kempo Karate, you favor that hard style, that hard line, right? Although there is fluid movements in it. Or you do the Chuan Fa, okay, which is much more fluid, okay, but still has a little bit of the heart in it. So the difference was my father-in-law, that in our dojo to this day, we teach Kempo Karate and we teach Chuan Fa Gong Fu. So our students get ranking in TRK, Tony Ramos Kajukembo Kempo Karate, and they receive Chuan Fa Gong Fu, Tony Ramos Kajukembo. So that's sash ranking. So they wear sashes, and so they can get their black belt and black sash. So we have two separate rankings.
So it's kind of like two different systems going off into it's all you. Of course, it's under your school. It's all one system. But
It's
for anybody listening, like I get this question a lot about John Hackelman. Like, well, how is it that he's got Hawaiian Kempo and he's got the Kajukembo, and there's something very similar, where you'll have a Kajukembo instructor who might end up having a different system within their system, and they'll decide to either create a combination of both, or like you said, I think the way Hackelman's doing it, the way you're doing it, very similar to the way I do it too. It's easier to just distinguish both systems and have the student, because I mean, some students don't, right? Like I've had some students that don't want to, like they not that they don't want to, they can't, especially when you start getting into wushu, they just can't. Their body can't move that way. I've tried. It's just maybe age, because not everyone's the same age. Not everyone has the same abilities, and definitely a lot of the kung fu stuff will demand stuff out of you that maybe the other stuff won't demand out of you as much. So either way, that's my spiel on why this happens within schools. So this makes sense. So you have your Chung Hua, and I have seen that around quite a bit, and then you have your Kempo system, and that's all part of the Ramos method. And if I've heard you correctly, the Chung Fa part is what's really, I'm trying to avoid a controversial statement here.
Okay.
Is according to what you said earlier, is very legit, because it came directly, and Ramos was very insistent that he trained in it, and if he wasn't there, he would send his family members to train in it and bring it back to the school. So it's very much following that lineage directly. If that's
Yes.
if I heard you correctly.
Yes, and it, and it has an expression in it. You know what I'm saying? And it definitely had, especially the self-defense was came into play. It's my father-in-law's flavor, of course, with it. So the techniques might not look exactly the same, but it starts out right the same. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. That makes sense. Now,
so
can you give me a concrete example of an explanation of, let's say, I don't even know if you do things in your school the same way. Let's say punch number one. Do you have a punch number one or punch counter number one? I don't know, an ABC number one. I've heard all kinds of titles for them.
we have it all.
Right, yes, the ABC 1, 2, 3s, whatever it is. I'm sure you have. Can you give me just an example, just a quick application of what a counter to a punch would look like in the Ramos method?
So describe it to you, or you want?
Yeah, you can describe it, or you can start standing up, moving around. It's up to you. Whatever's easier for you to do.
So all of our number ones look the same. Yeah, I mean, look the same. It looks, it's Kajukembo, right? Parry, long inward strike, snap kick to the groin, back fist to the temple, ground your feet, back fist to the temple, side kick, follow up, groundwork. Okay,
Perfect.
so
that's like one of your number ones right there.
Yes, so it's pow, 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 done, right? So that's our advanced technique number one, right? So we have a punch counter off of our Gung Fu, which is a little bit different because it has some of the Gung Fu flow to it. So like our number one Gung Fu is you step out and you do a Gung Fu outward strike, taking the eyesight, okay? And then you do a vertical punch to the floating ribs. You cross check parry. You back fist. You do a street back fist with an elbow chopping to the carotid, and then follow. So that's our number one punch counter.
All right, that's very concrete, and from the sounds of it, they'd be hitting the concrete. So it's a very concrete example.
So what happens is so our Kempo karate, right, is that foundation, right? So our Kempo karate, and this isn't, I'm not telling you anything, right? I'm just sharing, right? It's like, so the Kempo karate, right, is the block, right, to the building blocks. The Chuan Fa is the mortar that goes in the blocks, right? And then when you put it together, it's just solid. You know what I'm saying? Solid.
So now I'm gonna go. We're going all over the place. I'm gonna go back to a little bit back to our history lesson, because we're getting close to the wrap up here now. I want to make sure I don't miss anything on our history. But so far we've already checked the box. I checked the box for the self-defense, what makes it different. Now going back to our history real quick.
Okay.
So Ramos, he is training out of the garage. When does he open his school? Yeah, that's the part that I didn't get to. I think you briefly mentioned it.
So he didn't spend a long time in the garage at all. What year was the actual first school? Do you remember? Yeah, but not the location, the year.
I think it was like 65, 66.
Yeah, I think it was around 1965 was his first hard school.
Business
commercial school.
And who was part of that group when that started?
Oh, Emil Batista. He was one of the first ones. Calvin Shin was in it, and then the rest were a bunch of airmen. Oh, I take that back. So 1962, he was on West Texas Street.
Oh yeah.
1962. Yes.
All right. So 1962, he opens his first commercial school.
Yes.
They start they started training out students. This is in Fairfield, California,
Correct.
if I got that right.
Yes, sir.
And at this point, I know Leah's back there listening.
Yes.
So when did you and because you're a fundamental part of the history here. I know you said the training was hard. You were a kid, you're working your way up. And we're not going to talk about dates and times or years. You don't have to go there with me because we talked about that too earlier.
Oh.
But how old were you when you tested for your black belt? When did that happen?
Teenager? Was
No,
oh, I don't even know. Isn't that bad?
You can say, you don't have to say the exact age. You can say like in my teens, in my 20s,
Well,
my 30s.
yeah, because my black belt was like my brown belt was like my black belt, but that was like 18 because it was
Okay.
he did me worse as a brown belt. They need us his black belts. So I'm like, okay, so this is my black belt, huh? He's like, no, you got more coming. And so I was 20s. Yeah, 20s. I just don't know what 20s, 25, 26. Yeah.
Good enough.
See,
Good
doing it dates and stuff.
enough. Yeah, you don't have to worry about the dates. 20s is good enough.
I remember yesterday. Okay.
So there is Angelo, there's one thing I wanted to actually, just two quick things I just wanted to add about the difference with the Ramos is that in the mid 70s, Agong incorporated Kali into TRK, into Tony Ramos Kajukembo. And then what happened was he witnessed Supreme Grand Master Sorako Kenyete came to San Jose and did a demonstration. And after he saw that, he my father-in-law and my mother-in-law are both Cebuano, but they were Hawaiian born. So when he found out he was from Cebu and he saw him fight and he saw him spar, he was like, I got to learn that. He goes, that's from my province, man, you know? So him and another master martial artist went to they went from California, they went to Philippines and trained there extensively for a month. And he found this group called the Kenyete brothers. And Sorako Kenyete was one of the brothers that was there and the teachers. And they trained them and they certified him as a first degree black belt. And he came back and brought that and asked all of us at the dojo to immerse ourselves in Kokoi Kenyete Dose Pares. Okay.
And when was that?
So that was 85.
Okay.
1985.
All right. So
but he started implementing some Kali in the 70s.
Okay.
And there's a lot of Kajukembo guys that didn't have Filipino martial arts in their form, in their system. But we totally immersed in 85. And then what happened was Agong took it to that level. And then in 1987, he retired from civil service and moved back to Hawaii. Agong did. And then Kokoi Kenyete moved to San Jose and he found out about it. And he asked him if I could train directly under him. So when I started training directly under him, Agong, this is what makes him different. I'm trying to let you see a picture of it, Angelo, and to get in his head a little bit. I have the utmost respect for him, other than the fact that he's my master instructor. And the thing about it is that he's not afraid to learn from other people and to learn from his students. So he sent me to learn from Kokoi, and I made it all the way to a senior master under him, but I would continue to bring the knowledge back to his school in Hawaii, and he would just love it. I got videos of him, doing the knowledge, and what great grandmasters do that? I can only say the good ones.
you can say that. I can't say
I,
that.
I, you know,
I'm not allowed to
I,
say it. You're in a position that you can say that. I can't. I agree with you though.
I, I'm so blessed to have like two of the probably the best martial artists that I could ever, what to get one in your lifetime. I mean, Kokoi Kenyete was voted by the BBC as being the top 100 martial artists of the century. You know what I'm saying? And my father-in-law, it speaks for itself, Ogong. So yeah, like Mitch said, if you want to find out who the best, Kajukembo style or form is, ask that person who's doing it, right?
Yeah, talk to the top dogs, he said. Talk to the top dogs.
You smile like my brother.
It's her favorite one. Her favorite one.
Okay, I'm glad. As long as it's his favorite one.
No, we're good.
So Leah, so you got your black belt in your 20s. I'm guessing, and this is why I'm going there, right? Because I think historically we've already, if I'm following this timeline correctly, Ramos brings the art over from Hawaii to the mainland. He goes back and finishes up a little bit, gets his black belt, continues to train, opens his school in the 60s. You're there the whole time as a kid, training alongside this, and then you get your black belt. But as you said, your brown belt test was as intense as a black belt test, but you finally get in there in your 20s, get your black belt. So at this point, you're in the school, right? And the way Kajukembo works, you've already been teaching at this point since you were a teen. Because if you're a brown belt, but I'm not going to mention the times, like I said. But if you're a brown belt as a teen, that means as a teen you're already a colored belt, which means as a colored belt you're already, like we said earlier, running basics and stuff, pretty much living in the dojo, working in the dojo, and doing all at school and yeah. So when, and if I'm missing anything in between that, feel free to mention it. There's a point here where Ramos is going to retire, right? And then someone's going to come in and continue to run the programs. Without dating yourself, when maybe you don't have to focus on the when. Let's not focus on the when. I'll let David focus on the when. I just want to know how you felt and how you took on that transition. What was going on at that point in your life?
1987. Tell him that meeting.
Okay, here's what happened. He was going to retire, and he already told the family, I'm going to take mom back. We're going to go back to Hawaii. It's too cold here. So he's already getting things, talked about with people. But then he wanted to have this big meeting, okay? He wanted all his black belts, come to the dojo, come Saturday, whatever. And they all came. They all showed up. All right? So even including his sons, okay? And so and from his heart, talking from his heart, he says, I got to go back to Hawaii. Who is going to take over? Please come forward. Please. He's like, everybody's like,
But they said that they would.
And they said they'd help, but they didn't want to take over. Okay. And that's a hard, those are hard shoes to, fill. So, especially Tony Ramos, I mean, everybody knew him and this whole county. And so they're all just kind of looking at each other. Well, this guy right here, underbelt, stands up and says, I'll do it. I wouldn't let this legacy die. Who wants this legacy to die?
So I'm going to jump in here real quick because so I got to tell you, so Agum was very old school Hawaiian, right? So, and when it came to his martial arts, that's his life, he ate, bled, sweated, everything. So he basically said, I want you guys to take over my school. I'm retiring. I'm going home. Can you guys do it? And everybody's like, oh, we'll do it, Agong. We'll do it. Yeah. Oh, yeah, we'll do it. He goes, great. But he sensed he knew something. He could see it in him, right? And he said, but if not, take all of my stuff, all of my diplomas, all of my belts, pack it in a box, and send it back to Hawaii. And I don't want to hear from any of you ever again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was crushed, you know? So I'm like, dude, we'll make this work, you know? Absolutely. So what happened was the people that said that they were going to do it, they came in and got their vows. It lasted maybe like a month. And then I did a bad thing, and I was lying to him. And I told him that everything was okay. And I was a sergeant in the Air Force at the time, and I was having to pay everything off of a sergeant's pay, the tuition, because the school only had like about 10 people in it when he left, and I was one of those 10. So that's what happened, and it caused problems between us, of course, you know, because number one, she's like, tell Dad, tell him, just tell him, you know. He's like, boom. And finally it just came to where she just got on the phone with him, you know, and I came home from training, and she had the phone like this, you know, the hard line, right, you know, and I'm like, hey, what's up? And it's Dad. Okay, hey Dad, you know. He's like, hey my boy, you know. And basically he said, what happened? He goes, why are you not telling me the truth? I go, Dad, you know. He's like, close the school. He goes, close it down and go train with my black belts that live in Antioch or whatever, and Stockton. And I go, oh no. I said, there's no way I'll let this school close. You have started this legacy. It's been here forever, and it's not, I guarantee you, we will not let this close, Dad. He goes, I don't want problems between you and my daughter, you know, da da da. I go, it will not happen. We will make it work. And that was the promise we made to him. And I promised him that the students that train, that they will earn everything they get like we did. You know, every rank that they put on and everything, that they'll earn it, and we'll keep up with that legacy. So that's basically it. And then those other,
she wanted us to.
So then he was like, you know what? There's people wearing my patch that aren't loyal to me. He goes, I want it registered, because God forbid something happens to me. Everything that I have done and you have done for this Tony Ramos Kajukembo, they're going to take credit for, and you'll see all the crabs will come out of the woodwork. And we said, well, Dad, you know, and he goes, I want it registered. So we registered it with US trademark. So it's a service mark. The name Tony Ramos Kajukembo is trademarked, registered. So is the logo. So is any simulation of the logo, because I've seen a lot out there that look very similar, but not.
Butchered.
That's where he was. So of course we weren't everybody's favorite, you know, because people, you know, for the obvious. But our just thing is to make that legacy be as what
we're just keeping our promise to him.
Absolutely.
And we're doing it the best we can.
Absolutely.
And we don't care what people think, as long as our students are happy, you know. And his brothers, the brothers that mean to, because we have brothers that still, they were from my dad.
Martial arts brothers.
Our martial arts brothers. And they're very loyal, because they know what my dad wanted. So that's how it goes.
So one of the things, do you know how, like in Kajukembo, everybody's called Sifu, or right? Everybody, you get a black belt, you're Sifu and stuff. So we do ours. So one of the other things is Agong created requirements for student black belt all the way to 12th degree, because that's the way he was taught. He shared it, and he gave us requirements for it. He was a 10th degree when he passed away. So he had those requirements, and part of the requirements is he created the difference between a black belt and an instructor. So when you're a black belt, you're a black belt. but you have to go through instructors training. You have to have 220 certified teaching hours. You have to go through a course. So all of our instructors that are instructors and have that title are certified, and they do it yearly. They have to have a yearly certification process. We have 3 schools under Tony Ramos Kajukenbo organization. We have one ran by Sifu Arnesa Ramos Iranon, or Sifu Arnesa Iranon. That's Leah's sister, my sister-in-law, and her husband, Uncle Whitney
That's what we
Iranon,
call him, Uncle Whitney.
Uncle Whitney. And then we have Sifu Jason Jones, who's he's my 4th black belt, 3rd black belt, and he's in Washington State.
Big Ohana.
Yeah, that's a really big one. That's awesome. And at the same time, what a journey. What a journey. Try putting it together, working with family. Working with family is a blessing and a curse, depending on how that works. You know, when you're Ohana, you love together, you fight together, and and then you heal each other, and that's just part of the process. And that's really awesome that you were able to keep it going, right? When you see something so valuable looking like it's gonna go out, like a flame going out, you're able to throw in some wood and get that fire burning again. That's awesome. That really is.
36 years later, when he left 36 years ago, so that's a lot of work, but it's our livelihood.
So so Agong was he was a jet engine mechanic, so he worked a full-time job plus he taught at night, right? So I worked for the better part of 30 years of corrections, and I would teach at corrections, but I would come to the dojo, and we'd teach 6 classes a night, 5 days a week. So 4 to 6 classes. So there's that, and then you have people that some people only teach 2 classes, maybe 1 class a week, which is good. It's your journey. But by the grace of God, he allowed us to do all of this, to be able to do this through all sorts, and we've created such a following, you know what I'm saying? And these are our Ohana that isn't blood related. And that's true Kajukembo, right?
Well, I think we're almost out of time. But before I finish, is there anything that I missed? Anything that you wanted to say that you feel you missed before we wrap this up?
I just real quick, I want you to know that because if I could tell you something about my instructor other than the things that I said, he was very loving. He was known as that nobody could stop that smile. He was a jitterbug champion of Oahu. I mean, legitly running up walls. He was an awesome musician. He cut vinyl with Grandmaster Reyes, Alehu Reyes. They cut vinyl. They had beautiful voices. They were just awesome. But what it was is, how you have those numbered for techniques, that you had number 1, number 2, number 3. When it goes to the knife and club techniques, he took all the numbers away. He just worked angles because of he's so attention to detail. And if it didn't work, he used it. And one of the things he was known for, and I challenge Grandmaster Mitch, because he is the statistician of figuring things out, right? How many Kajukemboans were in law enforcement, right? Because Agong, one of the things we said that he was famous for is that he could have good guys and bad guys, meaning there's cops and there's robbers on the mat, gangsters. Because why? Who could do this crazy art, right? Who can take that beating? Tough people, right? So that's why military, law enforcement, and street people, right? He could get them all on the same mat. And while they were striking and doing all that, they were family. Now, maybe they went their separate ways, right? When they stepped off the mat, but as long as they were on the map, they were square.
And is
Oh,
there,
wait.
is there anything you
That's
want to mention? Yeah.
Behind this great man, my father, was my mother. She kept him in line sometimes.
And all of our CMOs in TRK are black belts. So CMO Leah, so she's a 6th degree red white belt.
I've watched my mother fight,
Yeah.
so she was real deal.
But we're gonna send you some pictures.
Yes, yes.
Angelo.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, yeah. If any pictures, send them over. And well, I'll edit them in throughout
Sure.
the show. I'll put them in the corners and stuff so people can see it, and also the thumbnail too when I put it together. Well, I want to thank you, both of you, so much for taking your time. Is there, Leah, do you want to mention something?
Oh no, I was gonna look at you closer.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure. I want to make sure you both get to say what you wanted to say. That's all.
Yeah,
Before
hope you got what you wanted. Did you?
I always get what I wanted as long as the guest actually showed up and I got to talk to him. That's all I wanted. I'm a very simple man with simple needs.
Well, we're but honored for you to
Yes.
to give us a chance to speak on it.
Thank you for wanting us to speak on your show.
I just appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much. And like as I mentioned to David, I'll mention the same to you. I would love to have you come back on and talk about your personal journey. When you have time. Not today. You know, it's already late.
Anytime. Thank you so very much.
And to my listeners, after about an hour of listening to a podcast, I should have said this first. If you like what you heard, or if you please subscribe. I know it's an hour in, but at this point, I guess only the real fans are still listening. So
Right.
don't forget to subscribe and share. All right, y'all. I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.
Aloha.